is every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Change is one constant in life. The one constant in life is change, and we had plenty of that in 2020.
Right. For sure.
And I know this quote can read differently for each individual due to their own experiences, because we are kind of subjected by our childhood or upbringing and how we see the world. But a brave new world, especially now, 2020, being unexpected year for most. What comes to mind, Jasmine?
A brave new world. After this year, Robert, honestly, everything is just up in the air. Nothing is expected. Everything has just been flipped upside down. So nothing is normal anymore. But for me, going into this next year, obviously things aren't going to change overnight. Like January 1st is not going to come and everything's going to be just changed. But to me, this year has given a lot of people perspective. It has changed personally my outlook on life, on the world, on people. And I think what we can get out of this year going into, a brave new world, since the world has changed so much, is kind of to see our place in the world. Like a brave new world can be a perspective for us to kind of see what we can give to the world.
About that. And this is the last real quote I'm going to kind of ask you to kind of put your thinking cap on and share what your thoughts of this quote. Everyone knows that fear is never a good thing when you're just consumed by it. It's necessary if you're out and about and you notice that something's danger, you leap out of the way. But at the same time, when it's constantly dictating where you go, what you do, what you don't do, I feel like that can be a big obstruction of your own wellness and even the fear of even connecting with those around you. So like you were actually kind of sharing when you were at that point,
Yeah, fear is very real. And as a cancer patient, that is always looming in the back of your mind. Is this treatment going to work? What is the next CAT scan going to reveal? What is the next blood test going to reveal? Am I going to get better? Am I going to get worse? If I get worse, who's going to take care of my family? The financial aspect. Am I going to leave my family in a huge debt with all the hospital bills? And like you mentioned, Robert, yes, the medicine helps and the care that you receive from the doctors and the nurses. But in a holistic world, holistic beings that we are, is much more than that. It's also the spiritual component, the prayers that are said on your behalf that kind of help you ease your fears and help you feel connected to a higher power, to God, the God of heaven, the creator, and he knows everything about you. So if he made me, why should I fear? Because I know that even knows the number of hairs on my head, even though they're a little bit less now. But he knows everything about us, so why should I fear? It says perfect love casts out fear in the Bible, and I really believe that. And that verse really came to the forefront in my healing journey, because I had to constantly remind myself to cast out the fear.
It says courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Mary Ann Radmacher. So
yeah. This quote actually realizes me that courage has a lot of meanings.
Mm-hmm.
And let's imagine something. We have a firefighter who risks his life every day for saving other people's life. And we also have a person with depression who decided not to take his own life like a couple minutes ago. And I'm just asking who has more courage. And many people will say firefighter, but I want to say that these both situations demands the same courage. The second one even more.
The two storms in recovery. What have you seen that worked, and what have you seen that has not worked from your own experience?
Well, what doesn't work is ignoring the issue. What doesn't work is thinking that it's not there. Ignoring the warning signs, not taking action as early as possible. For many parents that I've worked with, they were really caught off guard when they discovered that their child was using a substance like alcohol or marijuana. After I would describe their child's history of using a substance, they would look at me and many times they would say something like, "I had no idea this was going on." So I think what doesn't work is avoiding the issue, and many parents don't want to accept that alcohol and drugs are out there that are good. They may believe they're out there, but they're not going to affect their kid, and then they learn later that it does. So ignoring the issue, not getting on top of the first signs that a parent sees, those are all things that don't generally work out very well. What does work is recognizing the warning signs, and my book has warning signs in there for alcohol and marijuana and self-injury and eating disorders. So knowing what the warning signs are, just educating yourself. What should I be looking for as a parent? And my book helps parents understand those warning signs. And then secondly, when you see those warning signs, get some type of assessments done, get some testing done so that you understand not just what the warning signs are, but what's driving those warning signs.
A lot lately, because I feel it's so inspiring. And February was earlier this year, and Martin Luther King Jr. A lot of people know him for "I Have a Dream" speech, but one of the quotes that I love the most, he says, and it reads, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." Seda, what comes to mind when you hear this quote? Any insight you want to share?
First of all, that quote is my favorite quote ever. I love it.
I like it because it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, continue.
I just like how simple it is, how it goes through this progression of and it's super inspiring because we all have been in those points where we were crawling just to move forward, especially those in recovery. I want to hear your insight more on this quote and anything else you want to share.
The quote, yeah, I mean, I feel like people have gone through hell and back. And to remember that there's whatever obstacle comes your way, whatever happens, that there's another way. If you can't walk through it, you can crawl. If you can't jump, there's different ways to get to the point you want to be in life. Just don't stop. Just keep pushing forward. And I think that's something we all need to remember. And to have that realization in your head that, oh, okay, there is a different way. Oh, okay, I can do this instead of giving up. It's such it's a big step for people.
It is, and sometimes it gets hard to see it because, let's be honest, mental health can be messy.
So definitely, numbing the pain is a first response you get whenever you're in this trauma. It's a trauma response, right? That we fight. It's a defense mechanism that we think that we need to protect ourselves from the pain, and we usually, I did, from speaking from experience, I engaged in maladaptive behaviors and self-destructive behaviors, things that were actually triggering the trauma again and again because I felt like I deserved the pain, or I needed to feel the pain for me to feel something. And at the same time, it's a very strange feeling that it's also numbing that pain. It's numbing the pain, but it's triggering pain again and again for me to be able to kind of silence the loud noise in my mind that comes from all the triggers. So and when I did finally try to address it, I experienced sexual violence. I've experienced trauma when I was 19 years old. And I did not get help till 8 years later. And in those 8 years, I was subjecting myself to a lot of painful, destructive behavior that did no help to healing the pain. Instead, it actually made it worse. It exacerbated the pain. And when I finally found help and I was trying to go through the healing process, was when I realized how bad I had come from spiraling out of control, trying to numb that pain. And when the healing finally began was only when I actually realized how bad it had become.
The quote, because I always say someone has said it better than me, and I know that is a fact. But with that being said, I thought this was an interesting quote from Teal Swan. He said, "Every addiction, no matter what it is the result of trying to escape from something by going in the direction of a need that is currently not being met." Interesting how they kind of elaborates, unfolds this idea. It's always something that we're missing when we get addicted to something or something that we feel that we need to fill, and sometimes we do it with some of the most toxic ways, but it doesn't mean that there's not hope. And what comes to mind when you hear this quote? I'll bring it up again. So
it's a really interesting quote for me, because that I've seen and heard similar quotes or that have a similar message behind them, and I think there's a huge resonance for me within it, and part of the reason why I'm so glad to have the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners is for exactly this reason. I spent 25 years chasing something that turned out to be the wrong thing, and it was an addiction. It was absolutely an addiction. For me, it was an addiction of success and money and greed and all these things. But it was no different. That the coming off it, the damage it did to me was no different really from any addiction. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The thing that was not being met for me was I didn't feel I was succeeding well enough. I didn't feel I was as good as my peers. I didn't feel I was as successful as my parents. It was insecurities. It was all kinds of things. And that's what I was trying to feed. Yeah. So it resonates.
Begin us in this journey of talking about securing our value. And it's from Jim Rohn. It says, "The major value in life is not what you get. The major value in life is what you become." What comes to mind when you hear this, Jen?
Yeah, I think that for me, I just think life is so short, and you just think about time and sort of movement, and we can accumulate all these different things, but at the end of the day, when we do die, none of those things go with us. So I think, with each, I think sometimes I used to think it's these large decisions that really set the course of our life, but I really think it's those habits, those small decisions that we're sort of unconsciously or subconsciously making each day. And so I think with each of those decisions, we're becoming, who we are. And I think that's a lot more powerful than anything that we can attain or can essentially sort of grasp at times.
People have said it better than I have, and Napoleon Bonaparte says it this way, and I want to hear your insight. It says, "Courage isn't having the strength to go on, it's going on when you don't have the strength." What comes to mind when you hear that? Courage isn't having the strength to go on, it's going on when you don't have the strength.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to be brave and have courage when you know the outcome of something and when it's easy. And I know from my own recovery experience, there were a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty, and I wasn't really ready to get help until I had absolutely zero idea how to get out of the hole that I had put myself in. And for me, as far as leaning on other people and just having the courage to ask for help, I think is key. And so it just really takes me back to that place of uncertainty and just not knowing. And I think that that's the most beautiful place a person can be in whenever it comes to early recovery, or even just contemplating recovery, is just not knowing. And in those moments, reaching out to people who do know and allowing them to carry you through the process.
Churchill, and he says, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. What comes to mind? Gina, I just kind of throw it out there for a thought kind of exercise for both of our parts. But anyway, what comes to mind when you see this quote?
2 words: fail forward.
Let's just go with Anthony Lacone. I love how he says this. He says, everyone needs a house to live in, but a supportive family is what builds a home. Absolutely. What comes to mind?
Well, I mean, you need that sense of home. That means you have support. A house is just a house, figuratively and literally. You can be under the same roof, and if you don't have that support, you don't have people encouraging you and helping you in your recovery, you're not going to recover as quickly. So, that's how I see the difference between house and home.
Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. How do you read this, Amy?
Well, my website has a scripture that talks about expose the darkness all around us and be a source of light in the dark. And so for me, it's just, rising above and being that example, I guess, or that kind of a beacon of hope.